The secret the world should not know. They tried to hide the truth for decades, to maintain absolute silence, to erase any trace that could raise suspicions. But time has a cruel way of bringing to light what one wants to forget, and now, after so many years, the world finally finds itself faced with a revelation that could change everything. The third secret of Fatima has always been surrounded by mystery, fear, and controversy, unlike the first parts of the prophecy that had already been revealed. This last secret was kept under lock and key within the walls of the Vatican. Hidden documents, silenced witnesses, and theories that have been ridiculed over the years, all to prevent the world from knowing what the Virgin Mary really revealed to the three little shepherds in 1917. But why? Was this secret considered so dangerous that the Church decided to hide it from humanity? If the first secrets already spoke of wars and the terrifying vision of hell, then what could be worse than that? The answer to this question has astonished theologians, religious leaders, and even popes, who say that the third secret reveals an event of catastrophic proportions, something that would change the Church forever. Others claim that its revelation could destroy the faith of millions of faithful. But there are also those who believe that the real reason for the Vatican's silence is not just to protect the Church, but to hide a bigger scandal. And now, more than a century after the apparitions of Fatima, the signs seem to be everywhere. The world is facing unprecedented crises, wars, religious persecution, the decline of faith, and a profound moral crisis. Are we already living what was prophesied? Could this secret that they tried so hard to hide already be fulfilled before our eyes? The only way to understand all this is to go back to the beginning. We need to revisit the events that marked 1917 and understand why these heavenly messages caused so much fear within the Church itself. What happened in that small village in Portugal that made even the Vatican tremble with fear? In the next few minutes, you will discover shocking details, information that was hidden from the public, and evidence that something much bigger than we imagine is at stake. But first, a warning. If you are prepared to know this truth, keep watching. Otherwise, it might be better to stop here. Now, it's time to go back to where it all began. The story we are about to tell is not just a story of the past. It is a warning, an urgent call that echoes to this day. To understand the weight of the third secret of Fatima, we need to go back in time to a small village in Portugal, where something extraordinary happened in 1917. The setting was Fatima, a humble village far from the big cities, where life followed its peaceful course. The world was at war. The First World War was devastating Europe, bringing fear, hunger, and destruction. But while empires and armies faced each other on the battlefields, a supernatural event was about to change the history of faith forever. Three children, Lucia, Francisco, and Jacinta, simple shepherds who were taking their sheep to the fields, were chosen to witness something that completely escaped human logic. On May 13, 1917, while they were tending their flock in Covardia area, they noticed an intense light in the sky. The brightness was unlike anything they had ever seen before. It was something alive and penetrating, impossible to ignore. Then, before them, a woman dressed in white appeared. Her presence was so intense that she seemed to radiate a light stronger than the sun itself. Her voice, both soft and firm, conveyed a mystery that the children would never be able to forget. She introduced herself as the Virgin Mary and said that she brought a message to the world. She asked them to return there on the 13th of each month and promised that she would reveal 3 great secrets that would change the destiny of humanity. In the following months, the apparitions continued on the 13th. At each meeting, the Virgin brought urgent messages warning about future events, calling humanity to repentance and conversion. However, it was not only the words that marked these apparitions. Something even more impressive happened. Unexplainable miracles began to occur. The children, who until then had been only 3 anonymous children in the crowd, began to be accompanied by curious and even skeptical believers. The number of people increased every month, because everyone wanted to see with their own eyes what was happening. Then, on October 13, 1917, in front of more than 70,000 people, a celestial phenomenon occurred, the so-called miracle of the sun. The crowd, made up of believers and non-believers, witnessed a spectacle that defied any scientific explanation. The sun seemed to detach itself from the sky, spinning on itself, emitting lights of different colors, and at a certain moment descending at high speed towards Earth. Panic took hold of everyone. People screamed, prayed, threw themselves to the ground, certain that the end of the world had arrived. But suddenly everything returned to normal. The sun returned to its place and absolute silence took hold of the crowd. Many of those who were there were never the same again. The phenomenon was recorded in newspapers of the time, described by journalists who had previously ridiculed apparitions. Something grand had happened, and this could no longer be ignored. But while thousands of people marveled at what they saw, inside the Catholic Church, another movement began, a movement of caution, fear, and silence. The messages that the Virgin Mary entrusted to the 3 children were not just words of comfort or hope, they brought prophecies that shook the world. The first and second secrets were already shocking enough, but it was the third secret, the one that was to be revealed in 1960, that caused true terror within the Vatican. And so, faced with the decision to disclose or hide this revelation, the Church opted for silence. But what could be so frightening, so devastating, to the point of making the Vatican itself hide the truth from the world? What happened in Fatima in 1917 was much more than a simple religious event. It was a warning, a call that over time only became more urgent. But at that time, few understood the gravity of the words of the Virgin Mary. With each apparition, the 3 children heard messages that carried an unimaginable weight. At first, the shepherds could hardly believe what they were hearing, but over time they realized that their lives would never be the same. The Virgin Mary revealed 3 great secrets. The first 2 were revealed to the world in the mid-20th century, the third was silenced. The first secret, the vision of hell. The first secret was a terrifying vision, something so terrible that even decades later, Sister Lucia, the only one of the visionaries who survived to old age, said she could never forget it. The children were led to an experience beyond human understanding. The sky opened before them, and for a brief moment, they could see what was happening on the other side. What they witnessed was hell itself. Lucia later described, "We saw a sea of fire. Immersed in this fire were demons and human souls that seemed transparent, black or tan embers, floating in the fire, carried by the flames that came out of themselves, mixed with clouds of smoke. They fell from all sides like sparks in a huge fire, without weight or balance, between screams and groans of pain and despair. How horrifying, and made one tremble with fear. The images were so strong that Francisco and Jacinta began to live in constant penance, praying without ceasing to save souls from eternal torment. The impact was absolute. The message was clear: sin has eternal consequences. Humanity was in danger, walking towards the abyss, and if there was no conversion, the fate of many souls would be sealed. But the revelation did not stop there. The second secret, the prophecy about the Second World War and Russia. The second part of the message came with a prophetic warning. The Virgin Mary announced that if the world did not repent, a new war, even more destructive, would happen. And that was exactly what happened. The Second World War began 22 years after the apparitions of Fatima, causing the death of millions of people. The vision was not just a warning, it was an accurate anticipation of one of the greatest tragedies of humanity. But the second secret went beyond the war. The Virgin also made a specific request, that Russia be consecrated to her Immaculate Heart. Otherwise, the country would become an instrument of destruction, spreading its errors throughout the world. This is exactly what happened. Communism, which was still emerging in 1917 with the Russian Revolution, grew to become one of the most destructive ideologies of the 20th century. Atheist regimes that persecuted Christians, destroyed churches, banned faith, and terrorized for decades. The prophecy of Fatima predicted all of this with frightening precision. Given this scenario, it was impossible to ignore the divine warnings. The revelations of Fatima were being confirmed before the eyes of the world. But there was something even more serious, the third secret. The last part of the message was so shocking that the Vatican decided to hide it. If the first two secrets already spoke of wars, persecutions, and hell itself, what could be even more frightening? And above all, why did the Church choose to remain silent? This is what we will reveal next. The first secret showed a hell that no one wanted to believe existed. The second secret predicted a war even more devastating than the First World War. The fact happened, but what about the third secret? What could be so frightening that the Church itself decided to keep it silent? The Vatican knew that this last revelation could not be disclosed without severe consequences. Pope Pius XI read the secret and was shocked. He chose not to reveal it to the world. After him, other popes came, and they all made the same decision, to keep the secret hidden. But why was Sister Lucia, the last surviving of the three visionaries of Fatima, pressured to write the third secret? She obeyed, recording the contents in a sealed letter delivered directly to the Vatican. Lucia recommended that the secret should be revealed in 1960. The year 1960 arrived. The world waited anxiously, but to everyone's surprise, the Vatican revealed nothing. What happened behind the scenes? The official justification was that the contents were very difficult to understand and that it could cause worldwide panic. But this explanation convinced no one. On the contrary, it fueled speculation even more. There were rumors that the secret spoke of the end of the world, a great divine punishment, or the fall of the Church due to internal corruption. Some theories said that the Vatican itself was compromised, and that the secret would reveal a spiritual collapse within the ecclesiastical hierarchy. With the silence of the Church, many began to question whether, since the first two secrets were already extremely impactful, this third secret was even more dangerous, because something that should have been a divine message was hidden from the people. It was possible that the Church was hiding something that could shake its own structure. From that moment on, the mystery grew even more until finally, in the year 2000, the Vatican made an announcement that the third secret of Fatima would be revealed. The faithful waited with expectation, but when the content was presented, there was shock. What was revealed seemed like a symbolic vision, according to the official version. The secret described a bishop dressed in white, interpreted as the Pope, being killed by soldiers in the middle of a city in ruins. The explanation was that this vision would be related to the attack on Pope John Paul II in 1981. But that didn't make sense. Why would the Church have hidden something like that for 40 years? If it was just a report of a possible attack, what was the reason for so much fear? Religious people and scholars contested the official version. Many believed that this was only part of the secret, and that the complete revelation remained hidden. Pope Benedict XVI himself stated years later that the complete message had not yet been revealed. Furthermore, important figures within the Church confirmed that the secret was much deeper than the version released. Among these voices was Father Malachi Martin, a theologian who would have had access to the original content. According to him, the true secret speaks of a great apostasy within the Church, a massive abandonment of the faith by cardinals, bishops, and even popes. The crisis would not come from outside, but from within the Church itself. If this were true, it would mean that the greatest threat was not a catastrophic event in the physical world, but rather a spiritual destruction, a silent corruption that could lead the Church to a total collapse. This would explain the Vatican's fear. If this revelation were fully disclosed, millions of faithful could lose confidence in the Church, generating an unprecedented crisis. But the question that remains is, if this conspiracy is real, what still needs to be revealed? And more than that, are the signs of this collapse already happening before our eyes? The Vatican insisted that the third secret of Fatima has already been completely revealed, but many question this version. If everything was already exposed, why did so many popes show fear when reading it? If there was nothing left to hide, why did John Paul II, Benedict XVI, and even Francis make indirect references to a spiritual collapse within the Church? The answer to these questions may lie in the signs we are experiencing today. The current world seems plunged into an unprecedented crisis. Constant wars and conflicts spread across the planet. The Christian faith is attacked from within and without. Morals and spiritual values are ridiculed and replaced by anti-Christian ideologies, and within the Church itself, divisions arise that shake the confidence of the faithful. This did not happen suddenly, this was predicted. What was officially revealed by the Vatican in 2000, Pope John Paul II and Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, who would later become Pope Benedict XVI, released an official version of the Third Secret. According to this account, the secret described a prophetic vision, a bishop dressed in white, who would be the Pope, walking among corpses in a city in ruins. He is attacked and killed by a group of soldiers. The scene seemed to be a metaphor for the persecution of the Church and the threat against the Pope. The Vatican suggested that this vision was related to the attack on John Paul II in 1981, when he was almost assassinated in St. Peter's Square. But this explanation did not convince everyone. If this was the complete secret, why didn't the Church reveal it as soon as it was supposed to in 1960? Why keep something so simple hidden for 4 decades? The official explanation seemed incomplete. Many believe that only part of the secret was revealed and that the real content remains hidden. There are indications that this theory may be true. Sister Lucia's testimony, the hidden revelation. Sister Lucia, the last surviving seer of Fatima, was silenced for years. Her testimony was monitored, and few had access to her. In the rare moments when she managed to express something about the third secret, she left disturbing clues. In one of her letters, she wrote that the secret was much more serious than the vision of hell. On another occasion, she said that the Church would go through a great trial where many would lose their faith, and the truth would be obscured. This suggests that the true secret was not just about external persecution of the Church, but about something that would come from within it. Father Malachi Martin and the Great Apostasy. The most controversial voice on this issue was Father Malachi Martin, a former Jesuit priest who claimed to have read the true content of the third secret. According to him, the secret described a great apostasy within the Church. In other words, the greatest threat would not come from outside but from within. Cardinals, bishops, and priests would stray from the true faith. Doctrines would be corrupted to please the world. The Church would lose its identity, becoming unrecognizable. These words were spoken decades ago, and now, observing the current scenario, many of them seem to be coming true. The signs of the spiritual crisis within the Church are internal divisions between cardinals and bishops, the distortion of Christian teachings to suit modern ideologies, scandals that shake the trust of the faithful, and the Church's departure from the values that sustained it for centuries. If this is the fulfillment of the third secret, it means that we are in the midst of the great crisis announced by the Virgin Mary. The question that remains is how far this will go, and, more importantly, does the Vatican have anything to reveal? Because the true third secret speaks of a collapse of faith. This means that the greatest test for humanity is yet to come. Since the beginning of his pontificate, Pope Francis became a controversial figure within the Church, loved by some and criticized by others. His way of governing and his words have brought divisions among the faithful, bishops, and cardinals. However, there is one detail that few have noticed. Francis may be directly involved in the final revelation of the third secret of Fatima, if the interpretations of the spiritual collapse are correct. Then he may be the Pope who will preside over the greatest crisis in the Church. And his own statements suggest that he knows more than he is saying. Francis' prophetic references over the years. Pope Francis has made several statements that refer directly to the prophecies of Fatima. In one of his statements, he warned of the hour of the devil, a period in which the faith would be attacked from within, and the Church would face a trial like never before. On another occasion, he said that the great apostasy had already begun, and that many within the Church itself were moving away from the true faith. These statements are not common for a pope. Instead of denying or minimizing the theories about the third secret, Francis seems to be indirectly confirming them. Whether he really believes that we are living in the era announced by the apparitions of Fatima. This raises an even greater question: what has he not yet revealed? The last pope before the end. Another theory circulating behind the scenes at the Vatican is that Francis may be the last pope before a major event that will change the Church forever. This connects to an ancient prophecy attributed to Saint Malachi, a 12th century archbishop, who is said to have predicted all the popes in history until the last one. According to this prophecy, the last pope would be called Peter Roman and would rule in a time of extreme tribulation. The curious thing is that the prophetic motto for the last pope describes a period of great destruction in which the Church would be purified by fire. Francis has already been called by some theologians the Pope of Transition, the one who is preparing the world for a radical change within the Church. But what does this change really mean? And how does it connect to the third secret of Fatima? The final revelation is yet to come. There is a persistent theory among Fatima scholars that the Vatican may be waiting for the right moment to disclose the final part of the third secret. The reason is fear of the impact that this could cause. If what has been kept secret for so long really speaks of a moral and spiritual collapse within the Church, revealing it now could mean a global crisis in the Christian faith, an even greater division within the Vatican itself, and confirmation that we are in the time prophesied by Fatima. Francis has already given signs that something important is coming. He has made statements about the need for a great change within the Church. He has spoken about the persecution that is yet to come, and has insisted that faith cannot be just a dead tradition, but something alive and radically transformative. This connects directly to Mary's words at Fatima. If this crisis has already begun, it means that the prophetic climax may be closer than we imagine. The question now is whether we will be able to recognize the signs before it is too late. Since the apparitions at Fatima in 1917, the Virgin Mary did not come only to warn about the future, but to give an urgent call to humanity. Her warnings were not just predictions, but an opportunity for change, a final warning before the darkest events came to pass. And this call still resonates today. The Virgin Mary made 3 main requests, and these requests are the key to avoiding the destruction that was announced in the 3rd secret. But the big question is whether the world has heeded this call. Request for prayer and penance for the salvation of souls. The first message of Fatima was clear: sin is taking many souls to hell. The Virgin showed the children a vision of hell so that they would understand the urgency of conversion, and left a clear request: pray the rosary every day, do penance for sinners, offer sacrifices for the conversion of humanity. The rosary was not requested as a simple religious tradition, but as a spiritual weapon against evil. The question that remains is, has the world obeyed it? Today, more than a century later, the Christian faith is weakening. The churches are empty, and sin has become normalized in society. Humanity ignored this request, and now the effects of this negligence are beginning to appear. Request 2: the consecration of Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. The second request was an urgent measure to prevent the advance of the World War. Mary warned that Russia would become a global threat if it was not consecrated to her Immaculate Heart. At the time, this seemed impossible to happen, but years later, the Communist Revolution took over Russia, and the prophecy began to be fulfilled. Communism spread, persecuted Christians, destroyed churches, eliminated millions of lives, and weakened the moral values of society. Over the years, different popes have tried to carry out this consecration, but many claim that it was never done exactly as Mary requested, and the result was the advance of secularization, moral corruption, and religious persecution around the world. Mary had given the way to avoid this, but once again, the request was ignored. Request 3: devotion to the Immaculate Heart of Mary as a last protection. The Virgin made it clear that in the most difficult times, the only salvation would be devotion to her Immaculate Heart. This meant that humanity needed to seek a life of holiness and true conversion, pray for the world and for priests, and offer sacrifices for the salvation of souls. Mary warned that if humanity did not change, great trials would come. She did not promise that she would avoid all punishments, but she assured that whoever was under her spiritual protection would remain firm in the faith, even in the most difficult moments. The big question is, are we preparing ourselves spiritually for these times? The call is ending. During the apparitions, the Virgin left a worrying warning: if humanity does not heed my call, it will be too late. If the signs we are seeing today are in fact the fulfillment of the prophecies of Fatima, then it means that the time to act is approaching. The messages of Fatima were not only for the 20th century, they were for our days. What we are witnessing today, divisions in the Church, persecution of faith, wars, and moral crises, were already predicted in the apparitions of 1917. And this leads us to an even more important question: what is happening now? We have reached the decisive point of this story. The prophecies of Fatima were not just a distant warning, they are being fulfilled now. The question that remains for us is no longer what will happen, but what can we do? Humanity received a call, a request to change paths before it is too late, but until now, this call has been ignored, and now we are living the consequences of this choice. What we are seeing today, just look around, shows the signs that something devastating is happening. Wars are breaking out in different parts of the world. Faith is being ridiculed and replaced by anti-Christian ideologies. The Church is facing an unprecedented internal crisis. The world seems increasingly divided and plunged into moral and spiritual chaos. If these are not proof that the prophecies of Fatima were right, then what else would be needed for humanity to realize this? The most impressive thing is that all this could have been avoided if we had heeded the Virgin's call, if we had chosen the right path. Would we be facing this great crisis today? But now there is no more time to look back. What matters is the choice we make from now on. Destiny can still be changed. If the messages of Fatima were only about disasters and destruction, it would be easy to fall into despair. But that is not what the Virgin Mary left as her last message. She gave us hope, a promise that if we heed the call, we can still avoid the worst. And what was this promise? That in the end, the Immaculate Heart of Mary will triumph. But this victory will not be automatic. It depends on each one of us. The question now is not what will happen, but which side will we be on when it happens. Each one of us needs to make a choice now, ignore the warnings, as humanity has done for decades, or heed the call, turn to God, and prepare ourselves spiritually for what lies ahead. Time is running out. Now it is up to you. If this message made sense to you, if you feel that something needs to change, then do not stand still. Share this truth with other people. Pray, get closer to God. Don't wait for the perfect moment. It needs to be done now, because when the last signs are fulfilled, there will be no more time for repentance. The world has reached a critical point, and the only thing that can prevent the worst is our choice to fight for the truth. The prophecy has been made. The signs are everywhere. Now it's your turn to decide. And when everything unfolds before our eyes, only one question will remain. Do we heed the call, or ignore it until it's too late?